I would like to open this presentation with reading a couple words of wisdom from both of the booklets or handouts you guys have. If you don't have both copies, I'm sorry. Just short. So for Culture, Spirit, and Hope by Oso Rojo, he is a current adult inmate in High Desert State Prison. If you can turn to the last page, the title is called Crimes and Time. I'm just going to read a couple lines. Crimes and time. We are not proud of our crimes. We know why we are here. We understand our mother's tears. With a heavy heart, we do our time. In place of vengeance and hate, we accept our fate. On the sacred ancient road, we now walk, listening to our elders as they talk. Returning to the faith of the old ones has revealed our bright futures as it comes. That's Oso Rojo. Now, if you have words of wisdom from the inside by Shahid, the green booklet. Shahid is in Vacaville, this California men's facility, serving a life sentence. On page 2, I'm just going to read a couple of lines. On page 2, starting with You see, I started throwing rocks at the prison gates at the young age of 15. Many of the crimes I committed, I got away with, while others would end in an ass beating at the hands of whomever caught me. When I was your age, the neighborhood raised a child. That is, your parents had the authority as my parents and vice versa. A couple lines down, starting with I truly wish. I truly wish I would have listened to all those mommies and daddies when I was coming up. Because in prison, there are no mommies and daddies. You are on your own in here. And the only way to get a daddy in prison is to become someone's punk. Now, I wanted to start out with these 2 words of wisdom poems in a letter by 2 current adult inmates now, because it expresses how now they're doing their time, they've done their mistakes in their past, and they both got involved in the criminal justice system at a very, very young age in their teens. And I think it's well worth opening with those 2 because they're giving back, and they're trying to speak to the youth, and they're human beings as well. So I think it's really important for us to really, if you would like to continue reading through both of the booklets, it sends a really inspiring message. Last year, I was interning at Felton Juvenile Hall for a couple months, and I saw how passionate the staff were with the youth and serving the youth. And then I saw how Barrios Unidos goes in and they do their work as well in Felton Juvenile Hall. So I currently intern at Barrios Unidos, and I really, really love my time there. So this is how I came up with Felton Juvenile Hall detention reform, reformative justice methods, and the impact of Barrios Unidos on incarcerated youth. For a quick agenda or an overview for today's presentation, I'm going to go over the general youth population and higher education statistics as a general population. I'm going to go over the history of Felton Juvenile Facility and the JDAI, which stands for Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiatives Program. Then I am going to introduce the current study, how has Barrios Unidos positively impacted the incarcerated youth. And then my methods I've used for both of the sites, both Felton and Barrios Unidos. And then I will talk about suggestions and discussion for the importance of restorative justice. The general incarcerated youth population and costs. Approximately 93,000 youth are held in juvenile facilities in the United States alone. However, only in California, the average population back in 2010 was about 6,000 to 7,000 juvenile offenders in our juvenile halls. And it cost the state an average of $240 per day or per night for each individual. The state's overall incarcerated youth ethnic breakdown: whites they serve about 9 to 10% of the youth population. Hispanics is about 58 or 60%. African Americans about 28%. Asian is about 2%, and other is about 1%. Education versus incarceration. Now you see that tuition, this is just an average annual cost, average, and we know the prices are going up. Tuition for a UC is about $28,000. Now you see how the incarceration for per youth is about $216,000 per year, and still rising. Now, the impact of positive role models on our youth. Starting my research, I've come across a positive mentor for me as well. Dr. Victor Rios, he is a current UC Santa Barbara professor in sociology. And I look up to him because he's come a long way. He born and raised in Oakland, California, was a gang member, dropped out, drugs, alcohol, violence was all in his family, was all right there in his face, in his community. He got out of the gang, and he got a second chance by his own teacher. Went to school, graduated, and now is a renowned professor. He currently holds college workshops with at-risk and former incarcerated youth to get them to college, or get them to on the right track of college. Some common themes that make juvenile or youth enter the juvenile justice system is that juvenile justice programs are defunded. There's a lack of funding going into programming before and after youth enter the juvenile justice system. Discrimination, police brutality, the feeling of being lost in their community, even at school, because of lack of mentorship, because most importantly, the lack of parental support. And the list goes on and on. And one-on-one relations with youth are lacking in our communities. Now some history of Felton Juvenile Hall and JDAI, which again stands for Juvenile Detention and Alternative Initiatives. Before 1997, Felton was overpopulated with youth. There were more youth staying in one cell at a time. There was not enough programming. However, post-JDAI, the reduction has gone down of the juvenile population to about 33%. Post-JDAI, the average length of stay, before JDAI, the average length of stay was over 47 bunk days. Today is about an average of 20 bunk days. And the gender population breakdown, about 13 male offenders and about 2 female offenders. There's always a very low female population in Felton Juvenile Hall. And the ethnic population in Felton Juvenile Hall, predominantly Latinos or Hispanics, and most of them are from Watsonville, California. So when I was interning at Felton Juvenile Hall last year, I wanted to see how JDAI is impacting the youth and the decrease of the population. So they gave me a list of all these alternatives the Luna Evening Center, the alternative education, job referrals. The list goes on and on. But then I really wanted to research a specific program that has consistent interaction or meetings with the youth, and that's why I am going to focus on Barrios Unidos. My current study is how has Barrios Unidos programming positively impacted the current incarcerated youth in Felton Juvenile Hall. And the sub-question or for further discussion, should educational and rehabilitative programs be taking place in other juvenile facilities? Before we go on, I would like to talk about some history of Barrios Unidos. Founded in the 60s by Daniel Hernane Alejandres, serves at-risk youth as a nonprofit community-based organization, promotes transcommunality and cultural education, works to build a peace movement with youth and adults, and provides alternatives to gangs and incarceration. So my methods or how I gathered my research for Barrios Unidos alone, I really wanted to get connected with the program coordinator and have an interview. So we did that. And then I would analyze their curriculum that they go and conduct in Felton Juvenile Hall. So Barrios Unidos goes in 2 to 3 times a week for an hour each day in Felton Juvenile Hall, have one-on-one check-ins with the youth. The average age of participants are about 13 to 17 years old. And earlier, as we saw, the population is overwhelmingly male.